Welcome. In this video, we'll be taking a look at how to add and subtract polynomials. So to begin, I've got a problem which is that Chuck has 3 apples, Larry has 4 apples, and my question is, in total, Chuck and Larry have what? So hopefully you got an answer of 7 apples. Okay, because if we take Chuck's apples and Larry's apples and combine them, we get 7 apples. Okay, so what I wanted you to realize is that notice that when I add like units together, like objects, that what I end up with is still the same object. So if I'm starting with apples and I add that to other apples, I end up with apples in the end. So keep units. Similarly, this is the same principle when I'm adding, say for example, 3x squared plus 4x squared. These again are like objects. I'm adding x squareds with other x squareds. So my final answer I know is going to be something x squared. And now the something is, well, if I add 3 and 4, I've got 7x squared in the end. Okay, it's also similar if I just had x's. So if I have 8x plus 5x, okay, again, these are like objects. I'm adding x's with other x's. That my final answer is going to be 13 x's. Okay, so notice that when I add x's with other x's, I end up with x's. When I add x squareds with other x squareds, I end up with x squareds. Okay, when I add numbers with other numbers, I end up with just a number. Alright, let's take a look at how we might do a problem like number 1. So number 1, we're supposed to be adding these 2 polynomials together. So the first step in doing that is there's a number in front of each group, and that number isn't written, but it's really a 1. So if I distribute the 1 through, nothing changes in either group, but we don't have those parentheses anymore. And now what I'm going to do is what we call combine like terms. So v squared is the same as 1v squared. And so if I add 7v squared and 1v squared together, those guys are partners, I'm going to end up with 8v squared. Remember, when I add like objects, I end up with that object. It's just a question of how many. Okay, the next set of like objects that I see are v's and other v's. So I see 4v here and negative 4v over here. So when I put those together, 4 and negative 4 make 0. So all the v's cancel out. So those v's cancel out with those v's. And then the last one is I've got negative 6 and negative 2, numbers with other numbers. If I combine those, we end up with negative 8. Okay, and a simpler way to write this, instead of having plus and negative, would just be to write 8v squared minus 8. Okay, I want you to try number 3. Pause the video and then restart it after you've given it a try. So for number 3, again, there's numbers in front of each group. So if I write those in there and distribute, I'll have 2t minus 5. But the second guy's a little tricky because now we've got a negative 1 in front of the group. So when I distribute, negative 1 times 4t squared is negative 4t squared. Negative 1 times negative 3t is positive 3t. Negative 1 times negative 5 is positive 5. So now I'm looking for like terms to put together. So 2t and 3t. Can put those together, and that makes 5t. I've got negative 5 and positive 5. Those guys cancel each other out and make 0. And then the last term doesn't have a partner, but negative 4t squared is just going to be carried down. Now, typically when we write these out, we want to write it from highest power of our variable to lowest power. So if I switch these 2 guys around, that gives me negative 4t squared. Notice the negative sign stays. with this term plus 5t.